Hey YouTube, this will be my final catch-up video, and even though it's Tuesday today, I'm just gonna, since I'm doing them, I may as well do the third one. And this will be week 20 of the YouTube Pagan Challenge, and it is, what does initiation mean to you? What is funny is these last three topics of these last 3 weeks have all been topics of conversation that I've been having in real life. Some of it influenced by the subreddits that I've been reading. I have been avoiding Facebook for the last couple of probably about a week now. It just came time, like initially in Facebook, I would just use the Chrome extension to what we lovingly call nuke my newsfeed, so I don't get a newsfeed on Facebook. Because I was playing stupid Facebook games, and that was the thing. It's the time suck. There's so many other things I can be doing and not being on Facebook. So I've still gone to a couple of group pages, and I was using Messenger, although I've switched to doing something else now. But the topic came up for initiation, and it normally does, right? Because you'll be anywhere on internet.com, and you'll come across, paganinternet.com, let's say. And there will come up the topic of initiation, because if you're wanting to do something, right? In this particular instance, it's because I have a group of friends, and we are starting to do a little bit of group something. And none of us have gone through any sort of formal initiation or formal training or any of that. And so it comes to that, like, who gave you the right? Well, I'm taking a chapter from Ellen Dugan, and it's like, we did. And I know that can come across, some people like to do that as the fluffy or whatever, and it's not. Basically, though, when it comes to the initiation rites, there's a key emphasis there in it is formalizing, bringing in the outsider. So when you have some of the mass initiations, like I know I've heard Alexander's did a whole bunch, like there would be a witch meet or pantheacon type of things. I'm sure it wasn't, I can't remember what instances, I just know that it happened in history, where they would have these mass initiations of people, and all you had to do was show up. I also know there were a couple of initiations that happened in a pub over some ale with a butter knife and a salt packet, right? So when it comes to those whole, like, valid lineage kind of debates and all that authenticity, there's always a bit of wiggle room. But my point is, with the mass initiations and such, it wasn't joining any sort of group. So in that type of way, it kind of does become invalidated. Not that it didn't happen, it's just that it's an initiation for the sake of having it, rather than the actual transformative experience that it's supposed to be. There are reasons why things would have been, you would have been bound or scourging or suspension or whatever, is these things were meant to trigger divine experience, really. It was ways to help. The issue that comes about is that there's kind of two different types when you're talking a religious practice. And it's something Cunningham talks on, because he talks about, there's that only a witch can make a witch. And he talks about, I say only the god and the goddess can make a witch. And I ask, who's more qualified? Well, there's something to be said about that, because if you actually have a transformative experience within Circle, then in the greater sense of the word, you've been kind of initiated yourself. There's a great series of kind of more heathen-oriented, she's really heathen-oriented, but she talks about Odin's initiation and how hanging from the world tree is basically a brand of initiation, and that would have happened. He was completely solitary. So it's a bit of a can of worms, I suppose, because on the one hand, there is that spiritual initiation that you can totally take on yourself. But more often than not, when it comes to the initiations that we speak of, it is formalizing your entry into a group focus. You take on, a student comes and they petition, and then they dedicate themselves, and then they would go through the process of learning that particular tradition's customs and ways, etc., etc., and then it's finally formalized when it is deemed that they have acquired enough knowledge that they will be welcomed into the fold. And that's it's just, that's totally legitimate for them to claim. Then you can't be, of that particular line or whatever. But to claim as a greater whole, somebody used baptism because there are, you have your baptism rites before you are a member of that particular congregation. And it doesn't quite work out the same, because if you're baptized in one tradition, often it's seen as being baptized because it's happened once, so it's good. In a Christian background, anyway. But, and then I've also seen people, when they talk of, like, priesthoods, and I get that, right? Traditional Wicca is viewed as a priesthood, but even there, you lose some water, because as soon as we step foot into Circle, like, we are acting as a priest or priestess. That was kind of the whole point with the Catholic Reformation, too, is if you are raised Protestant, you have not needed a priest to speak on your behalf. Anyway, so trying to think of these, I don't want it to come off as like, I don't know, it's going to bother who it's going to bother anyway. But I think that it is best put as the initiation having two types of initiation. And there is the group initiation and more of a personal initiation. And sometimes the two are happen at the same time. Other times they don't. Often they don't. I believe, I want to say Phyllis Curott talks about that in one of her books. It's been a while since I've explored them, but I want to say it was her. But some of the author somewhere writes about that, how there is two different types of initiation, and just because one is formalized in a group setting does not mean that the other one has happened at the same time. They can definitely happen at the same time, but it doesn't mean they always do. So I think I've had far too much rambling for one day because I've done 3 videos back to back, and one of them was like 15 minutes long. This one's 10. But I think that covers it fairly well. I know I struggled with this a bit because it's like Thorn. I really like Thorn, especially on her topics of the authenticity, which, like she says, are a lot of her videos. It's all that quest for authenticity. And it isn't necessarily something that comes from outside. In fact, I'd venture to say that it's really more something that comes from inside. That being said, if you have no basis or structure to build on, then eventually it does kind of become a watered down thing of, well, it's really not just do whatever you want, you know. That's about it.